Good afternoon. So I was inspired by the theme of this conference to submit a proposal here. I would not necessarily otherwise have done so because I don't come from a AI or high-performance computing background. I'm more from the museum and cultural sector. But I work at the Wikimedia Foundation, which is the charity that operates Wikipedia, a website you are hopefully familiar with, and a Wikipedia volunteer myself for over 15 years as an editor. And I hope that you're all familiar with the general principle of user-generated content that Wikipedia operates under, that the content is written by volunteers, including myself, from around the world, contributing their knowledge to a corpus of freely licensed, so Creative Commons, knowledge and photography and images and texts, obviously, for anyone to use for any purpose, including commercially. Has anyone in the room actually contributed to Wikipedia themselves personally? A few up the back there. Thank you. So you can fact check my citation needed for various statements here. For anyone else, Wikimedia is the network organization. It is a charity, it is a movement with the goal, this is our strategic, highfalutin sentence, where we hope to be the essential infrastructure of the ecosystem of free knowledge, and that others can join us in that process, with the two pillars of that strategic goal being knowledge as a service, that's where I want to talk today, but also knowledge equity, if anyone wants to talk about that, particularly the concept of epistemological decolonization. Come and see me at dinner. Notably, Wikipedia, does this do laser pointer? It does. Wikipedia is the thing you will have heard of. These are the various other websites that we operate, that communities contribute to, that feature different kinds of knowledge content, a dictionary, a quotation repository, source material, primary source texts, original documents, not encyclopedic compendiums from different people. Wikimedia Commons, I mentioned, multimedia repository, travel guide, and Wikidata, which hopefully some of you in this room have also been familiar with. Bonus points, have you edited Wikidata? So this Wikidata is the structured data repository. It is born structured in a way that Wikipedia is not. Wikipedia is text and has some structured content in it, and I'll be talking about that. Wikidata is triples. It is a Sparkle database which you can query in Triple Store. It is fabulous and is the future of Wikimedia movement as far as I'm concerned, but we will be talking primarily about Wikipedia. So Wikipedia is the website. Wikimedia is the movement overarching it. It is a charity and has the Wikimedia Foundation, which is the charity. Wikimedia Enterprise is the area that I work in as my day job, so also volunteer Wikipedian, also day job. This is the team inside the Wikimedia Foundation that is building the API services for high-speed, high-volume, and commercial reuse. So we all know that search engines, anyone large in Silicon Valley has been using Wikimedia content, Wikipedia specifically, a lot for a long time, and that's great. That gives Wikipedia its high visibility in search results. We don't pay them as often is assumed. They like our content. We have good search engine optimization because it's good stuff in multiple languages, written by humans, with footnotes, on a deep, long trail of content, not just small topics, or not just a short number of topics. But that comes with its difficulties, as we've discovered over the years, that huge volume of, the huge burden of serving high-volume commercial use, which is allowed as per our copyright licenses. We want the information to be used, and it can be used commercially. This is the classic open source software manifesto stuff. It's available for anyone to use for any purpose, including commercially, and repurpose as long as they make that content, that repurposing, available freely further, like Linux. old school floss. However, that costs a lot of money to serve, and since we are a donation-based service as well, money to run the whole show comes from small donations. It is unfair that these small donations are effectively bankrolling the business model of large search engines who are profiting off, in a good way, the reuse of that knowledge. So we have to find a way to, in an increasingly locked down internet, where other reusable corpuses of information, notably Reddit, Stack Overflow, and Twitter, have all shut down their reuse services and said, now pay us for what you used to have for free. We, as a charity, as a non-profit organization, as a movement dedicated to free access to knowledge, have to find a way to democratize that information in a way that is sustainable. We talked about democracy and sustainability in different presentations earlier today. That is financially sustainable, intellectually, ideologically sustainable, because we can't afford our community of volunteers to get disillusioned and say, oh, you've sold out. But also we can't maintain the increasing use volume that search engines, but now also LLM and AI organizations are putting upon our resources. And so we've invented this thing in the middle called Wikimedia Enterprise, which is the commercial API service for high-speed or high-volume reusers. And my challenge in my day job is being the community advocate and technology partnerships coordinator for this team. How do we provide a commercial service the Wikimedia way that's not selling out, but is still being part of the ecosystem sustainably of free knowledge access? We are trying to convince big tech and AI, LLM companies that it is in their business interests, not merely their ideological, high-minded interests, to maintain a healthy ecosystem of human-in-the-loop knowledge, because that's what Wikipedia is. It is human-written. It is possibly the last greatest thing on the internet left that isn't built on a Habsburg AI of. We heard this morning of a data set that is trained on AI-generated data set, which is then trained on the subsequent data set, which means what you get is blancmange. Wikipedia is a really useful baseline of real words written in up to, I think it's about 330 different language editions by humans. And so that has an extremely valuable commercial relevance to these institutions, and we need to try to find a way to have them pay for that without locking down the free access itself. So a lot of organizations think they have no competition. They like to think they have no competition. Our competition is ourselves, because we're not getting rid of the free thing. So how do you convince your Googles and so forth to give you money for the thing that they're already getting for free? In talking with, so most of our work has been initially with search engines, voice assistants, your phone interaction. But we've discovered over time that that's one category of commercial reuse. The other is AI, LLM, Gen AI for baseline truth finding and RAG dataset comparison. I should walk backwards a little bit from the slides I submitted. Turning up to an academic conference using words like every and all will make, of course, all of you think of examples that don't fit that superlative, but just bear with me. Put a citation needed against the sentence there. We've discovered, perhaps in selection bias, all of the AI companies we talk to say that they use Wikimedia a lot. So perhaps it's an example of selection bias, but we think that there are very few, if any, LLM or Gen AI text-based and increasingly image Gen AI companies that do not use Wikimedia as an input data set. Search engines prefer Wikipedia over Wikidata, even though Wikipedia is text in Wikidata is born structured. Page views, so how much an article is read, which we publish, all of the data about Wikipedia page views, how many times is it being read, is publicly visible. Not who, but how many. And that is being used as a heuristic by search engines for truth, which can be accurate, but not necessarily. It's interesting to see that they're doing that. Wikipedia has lots of structured information on it. You'll remember the box in the top right-hand corner of most Wikipedia articles has lots of birth date, death date, height of this mountain, that stuff. The info box, that's where Google got its own knowledge panel concept from, the right-hand corner of Google search result. That's really hard to use, apparently, even though we built it as structured data. The more human it is, does not make it machine readable, not surprising. Wikipedia, precisely because we choose to not write news, ends up being seen by commercial users as news. And if we didn't, then it wouldn't, rather contradictorily. No one actually gets how Wikipedia works, and so we have to do a lot of education of companies who you would expect would know how the internet works better, how the internet actually works, and no, you can't just say this person is a troll or this person is a vandal and this person is good on some kind of arbitrary ranking mechanism. No, we can't rank people for you. Trust is high but not blind. Wikipedia is well respected within limits, and that is fair. We've all heard arguments, particularly in academia, about, oh, you shouldn't trust Wikipedia. We agree. It's about intellectual or information literacy. It is not saying trust this, don't trust this. It's about allowing your students or the children or anyone, frankly, to interrogate the sources that they are reading rather than agreeing with one thing or believing in one thing and not the other. Again, I shouldn't have used the word all in an academic conference, but probably all, perhaps at least most, AI and Gen AI and LLM services use Wikipedia as an input data set extensively. And at the very least, that costs hosting money. We host ourselves. So before I get to more of the ethics part, I should do a bit of the tech part, which is not my department, but I should describe what it is we actually sell. And I should also mention, which I'll get to further down, that it is not only for sale. It's not like we say this is a commercial use, this is not a commercial use. That is an arbitrary distinction that Creative Commons has fought their own mistake in creating a non-commercial copyright license for Creative Commons, because there's no such thing as a clear definition of what is commercial use, especially if you're getting academic research money from a government grant, for example, that you then turn into a commercializable patent. Is that allowed? Is that commercial? Who knows? So we make no arbitrary distinction on what is or is not commercial. We sell based on volume and speed and personal assistance, hand-holding. We don't sell better Wikipedia. So feature number one, product number one in this new service, in this new world of trying to create a Wikipedia useful for AI and commercial data sets, is the fire hose. This is you want everything right now, and then you can filter it and sort it and extract it and ignore it at your peril or at your discretion, I should say. 2 is the on-demand API. This is you request individual pages whenever it is you feel like it, recalling that there are 330 different language editions of Wikipedia with a very surprisingly diverse Venn diagram of overlapping pages. So you would think that English Wikipedia is definitely the biggest, that's true, but the overlap of pages about a thing that exists on Wikipedia English and Wikipedia German, there's actually a surprisingly small number that are in both. A lot, because there's a lot of pages, but there's a huge proportion of articles that exist in German but don't exist in English, and vice versa, and extend that to every other language edition. So providing that kind of multilingual data set, there were some Russian examples earlier on, presentation this morning, Russian Wikipedia and other languages with matching alphabets, for example. You will find some fantastic sociological research to be done on seeing which language communities talk about the same thing in different ways. And then the snapshot API, this is you want all of English or all of Tokpisin or all of Afrikaans on this date as a database, as a data set. That's probably the most useful for our AI and LLM communities who want to use it as a baseline data set to then query and pick apart for language structure. And we provide that for free every 2 weeks. But if you want, in this structured service, if you want to use it a lot, then you have to start paying for that because it takes a lot of computational power to produce. But it's important we're trying to find this balance of what's fair in terms of open access and what's abuse. It used to be the case that no one would DDoS attack Wikipedia because that's just not cool. Now they do. And that's why we can't have nice things. Within the Wikimedia Enterprise team, we are not only providing data sets and these firehose services, but also research and pilot work trying to do things like how does vandalism or misinformation appear through Wikipedia into search results on different search platforms? How are people searching differently when they're on a short video service versus a audio voice request service, for example? Different companies want different kinds of formats, and so we build formats in structured ways that suit their use case, but importantly, the actual structure itself doesn't contain anything proprietary or unique to that customer, so it's then available for others to use as well. So, again, trying to find that balance of commercial service, we'll build it if you pay for it, but you don't get exclusive access over a better Wikipedia. Others can use it as well. But we'll build it in the way that you request it. Example, we have obviously lots of disinformation out there on the internet, including the fact of, you may have seen the phrase, according to Wikipedia, because that phrase is used a lot on the internet in general. That gets ingested into Gen AI text systems, and so it will vomit back at you hallucinations, sometimes at good attribution. We want attribution. Everyone wants attribution. So sometimes we get attribution, sometimes we get no attribution. That's inconsistent. Sometimes we get false attribution. According to Wikipedia, blancmange. And that's also a problem. So and it only happens because Wikipedia is itself so large, so we have an equal and opposite fight of fighting too much attribution that's incorrectly derived, just because the phrase according to Wikipedia appears a lot of places. So we're trying to create structured data signals that let a reuser take the raw information that a Wikipedian, that a human would understand, and give a 0 to 1 score of whether this edit is likely to be vandalism or not, based on what I call the EQ mix. Like a music producer has a desk of sliders, and that could be, this article has been edited a lot in the last 12 minutes by newly registered editors from mobile devices, and the article has been translated into 12 different languages in the last hour. That's probably news, and there's something changing rapidly. You can understand that intellectually, but turning that into a score that a search engine can then choose whether it wants to withhold updating that page, or perhaps they want, as their business model, to refresh it really quickly. That's their decision, rather than us giving some kind of editorial analysis, this is correct or not correct. It's a tricky balance to create. I'll skip over this, but there's varieties of ways you can research the data and metadata of Wikipedia. 10 minutes to go, or 10 minutes, or yes. I was talking for 10 minutes, or I have 10 minutes left? Oh, much more time than I thought. Including questions. So this is the info box that I was mentioning. on the top right-hand corner of most Wikipedia pages. This is Josephine Baker in English. This is Josephine Baker in 5 different Wikipedia languages. These are all human-written according to the aesthetic choices of those communities. And they should all have the same information, but not necessarily, because maybe the Arabic community didn't bother to update the death date. I don't know. She's not recent. You know what I mean? These could differentiate, and they could have different pieces of information depending on what's important to those cultures and languages. So we pass this out from Wikitext, which is beautiful for us but really hard to use and is bespoke, into an HTML blob, which makes it easier to extract and, if you prefer, completely ignore if you're just looking for the language as opposed to the data. But comparison across languages can itself be quite useful itself. Again, this is Josephine Baker, and if you take that Wikipedia article just as companies have done until now, access Wikipedia, the database, the website, and just scrape it, crawl it, which you can do, and you're welcome to do so, but you get this as a big, long, hot mess of data that is written for humans to display the way they wish for other humans, which is good, but not particularly useful if you're trying to then turn it into a model that you can turn into a voice recognition, voice response service or whatever. Notably, we extract things like, this is the opening sentence, this is the pronunciation bit, this is the metadata about their birth date, their height, their eye colour, this is the references, these are the categories. By naming them, it makes it much easier for the end user to be able to play with them the way, or ignore the way they wish. Notably for this crowd, we've recently done 3 things. Provided enhanced API accounts. So rather than saying you get 10,000 queries on our .com website, and then at the end of your 10,000 queries, come and pay for it, it's now 5,000 queries a month recurring. So we figure, we hope, that is a level that's appropriate for most academic or individual volunteer community use cases. If you actually need to make more than 5,000 API calls a month, you've probably got a commercial service. But if you've got an academic service that needs that, then come and talk to us and we'll give you for free anyway. And we also have recurring credits, same idea, but for the snapshots. So you get, I think it's 6 snapshots a month, or maybe, I'm not sure the exact period. That is, you can download the English Wikipedia 6 times, or you can download English Wikipedia, English Wiki Travel, English or French Wiki News, and something else once, however you want to structure that together. And that will repeat, but if you need to download the entire French Wiki News every day, then that's computation time that you probably have a commercial service. And also, as I mentioned before, various credibility signals for how do you computationally, without having to read every single Wikipedia edit, understand, is this more likely to be a credible addition to the data set, or is it more likely to be vandalism? That's more something for search engines, maybe. There's probably a lot of services that could benefit them otherwise. And they're available on Hugging Face in French and English so far. So if you don't want to have to learn how to use our .com service, there's 2 data sets available to play with right now, which we published a week ago, with quite extensive data cards about the attribution requirements, the limitations of the data set, and so forth. Soon is the same thing from Wikimedia Commons, which is a lot of multimedia, human-reviewed, human-tagged for categories and subject matter, all clear for copyright purposes, so we don't have anything that's fair use or reused by other, ripped from somewhere else on the internet. And we're having a big fight about whether we should allow AI-generated multimedia in that repository. It's challenging. For example, if we don't have a legally available, copyright-free photograph of that famous person, and it would be good to have their photograph on their Wikipedia biography, is it acceptable to send thousands of copyrighted images to a Gen AI service? It spits back a perfectly reasonable portrait of that person, but it's somehow washed of copyright restrictions, and we can use that in the Wikipedia biography? No, not because of the copyright implications, but also because it's intellectually dishonest. In the last 2 seconds of my presentation, this is my bit. This is where I work. How do we build a commercially viable service within the Wikimedia ecosystem of free access to knowledge that doesn't undermine our community's motivation to contribute, doesn't undermine the quality of the content, retains the virtuous cycle of eyeballs become editors or donors, become content contributors, which creates better quality content, which gets shared more, which gets more eyeballs, and Wikipedia gets better. We are seeing lots of AI and search engine voice repository services doing what we call disintermediation, where they'll take the content, use it. If you ask, what's the height of Mount Everest onto your smartphone, it'll give you a number. That comes from us, but they won't say that. So how do we maintain that cycle sustainably back to where it comes from without restricting the access in the first place? Maintaining financial independence, cloud agnosticism, so we don't get locked into certain vendors or certain structures of information or data, and not providing a better Wikipedia if you can pay more for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. So I want to gauge your opinion on this because I've noticed that in the past, many companies and organizations didn't really put much effort into Wikipedia. Right? They'd have some of the basic stuff, but in terms of all the latest and greatest, it normally wouldn't be in there. Now with LLMs and that once it scrapes, it's that point of history and time, and you don't know when the next scraping is going to be. There's almost kind of an urgent call to action to always constantly update it. I've seen this from a few organizations that their internal policies have completely changed as it relates to Wikipedia. Have you seen this change yourself? Is this a trend, or am I just hallucinating on my own?
How often a company will crawl Wikipedia content?
Yeah, we'll make sure everything's updated, add in new products or services as it comes.
It's what we found in talking to big tech and also medium tech, big for everyone else, but small in the Silicon Valley context. Everyone, they all take heaps. They all, internally, because we talked about siloed organizations earlier today, various parts of these organizations will be scraping and just ripping as much as they possibly can in whatever bespoke, janky method they can come up with, and then putting it in their data lake. And then the various parts of that organization won't know what the other parts have done. So if we ask, and we do ask, the official partnerships manager, how often do you actually use Wikipedia in your company? They'll say, not that much. And then we'll go and look at our actual logs. Like, well, yeah, you do. But they'll be coming from 6 different departments who are not talking to each other. And they'll all be doing it both internally and across each institution in a completely bespoke and fragile manner, such that if we change the skin of how Wikipedia operates, like we move the search box from here to here, or we enable dark mode, or we have the mobile website has a different URL schema, that breaks Google. So we're trying to make it a bit more consistent and inform these organizations that actually, you are allowed to do that, but it's inefficient for you, and it's bad for your readers, your reusers, your customers, and it's bad for the information's integrity. So it is in our mutual interest that you do it in a consistent and structured manner. But if you ask any individual company, they'll say, oh, no.
Got it. I think I saw your hand here.
Hi. Thank you. That was a nice talk. In the very start, you mentioned that one of the basically the main target is that we want to democratize Wikimedia generally. But the solution that was given, I just can't draw a connection between democratization and those solutions. I don't know like how they count for democratization. My second question is related to that as well. Like, why did nobody think about using or incorporating decentralization, which, in my opinion, would have solved many of the problems mentioned there? For example, it could have been used to democratize, basically, it could have been used for the verification, for giving credits. Basically, it could also have been used to, incentivize the users who contribute. So why not decentralization in any way? Thank you.
So there's different possible meanings of your question when decentralization and credits, but we've had examples of people saying, why don't we make NFTs out of Wikipedia edits as an authentication model, or which is just shilling for big whatever they're shilling for these days. Wikipedia model, as we've all seen for the last 20 years, doesn't work in theory, but it actually does work in practice. There's been lots of sociological, political, and economic models attempted to apply to it to see if this is it a democracy, is it an oligarchy, is it an anarchy? It's a duocracy is the best we can come up with in terms of the organizational model. And as we've seen intellectually, the quality of the content gets better on average over time. Maybe 10 years ago that could have been argued in a school classroom, but I think now we can see that yes, Wikipedia does actually work and its model of governance and knowledge integrity management operates. Can't necessarily say how in a convenient way. But other way in decentralization, Wikipedia itself is hosted and technically functions in an extraordinarily decentralized way. We are extremely aggressively caching the content because most people are not looking up the central server to edit. Most content is not being changed most of the time. So we make sure that the content is available not for high-powered computing, but for low-powered computing as much as possible. It's great if you in a 5G mobile phone can look up a Wikipedia article about a Pokemon in a university setting here, but it's much more important that someone on a 2G phone can look up the article about whooping cough vaccine somewhere in Liberia. So the actual website is kind of old school and not particularly sexy looking for that reason. So it is very decentralized, very old school in terms of its actual stack, and is hosted by ourselves so that we're not dependent upon whatever Amazon cloud services choose to do one day or the other, which is why when we get blocked, as we are currently blocked in Russia and China and sometimes Iran and until recently Turkey, but comes and goes depending on the country, we don't acquiesce to the request to just remove that article. We just say no. Because the knowledge integrity is more important than market access. And that's eventually, ultimately, an intellectual position we stand by, and it can be seen as cutting off our nose to spite our face, but the decentralization model of the funding, the infrastructure, the caching servers, and the legal base in America, for all of its faults, has a really strong method of defense of free speech such that we can have the same map of what is the border of this country, regardless of where you look up that map around the world. You go to any other website and ask it what the border of China or India or Argentina or whatever, and you will get a different shaped map depending on where you look for it. And we think that's intellectually dishonest, and so we maintain a decentralized model of financial independence as well as technical independence for that reason.
Thank you, Liam.
Thank you.